I swear, if anyone had told me 5 years ago that he would be the person who could unravel me with a single look, I would have laughed in their face. Because on paper I hated him. Everyone knew it. We fought like fire and gasoline, sharp words, eye rolls, constant digs at each other that left the people around us awkwardly laughing, like they weren't sure if they should intervene or grab popcorn. And yet, there was always this heat. It wasn't just anger. It was something that left my chest tight, my hands restless, my pulse just a little too fast whenever he was near. I told myself it was irritation. I told myself he was just the kind of man who thrived on pushing people's buttons, and that I was too proud to let him win. But the truth? Every time he smirked at me with that infuriating glint in his eyes, some part of me wanted him to. That night everything changed. It was a Friday, and the whole friend group had gone out for drinks after work. The bar was crowded, neon lights casting soft colors across flushed faces, music humming low in the background. He was already there when I arrived, leaning back in his chair, one arm draped lazily over the backrest like he owned the place. His gaze found me instantly. "You look different tonight," he said as I sat down, his voice smooth, low enough that only I could hear it. I shot him a glare, the same one I always used, sharp, dismissive, cold. "Don't start." But he didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned closer, his shoulder brushing mine as if it was an accident. "Who says I've even started yet?" God, my body betrayed me. My breath caught. My skin buzzed where he touched me, even just lightly. I hated how easily he could get under my skin. How I could feel the air between us shift, like there was an invisible thread pulling me closer. The rest of the night blurred. Banter that was sharper than usual. The way his gaze lingered on me a little too long. The way my laughter felt just a little too genuine when he teased me. And then as I was leaving, he followed me outside. The night air was cool against my flushed cheeks. He stopped just a step behind me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. "You know," he murmured, his voice softer now, almost tender. "You don't have to pretend with me." I turned to face him, my pulse pounding so hard I thought he might hear it. "Pretend what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled, a slow, knowing smile that sent a shiver down my spine. "That you hate me." And in that moment, I realized he'd known all along. My mouth went dry. For years, I had convinced myself that my constant digs, my sharp comebacks, my deliberate avoidance of him in vulnerable moments, were enough to hide the way my chest fluttered every time he was near. But the way he was looking at me now, like he'd seen straight through me, made my defenses crumble faster than I wanted to admit. "You think you're clever, don't you?" I tried to sound annoyed, but my voice betrayed me. It came out softer, unsteady. He stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough that I could smell the faint mix of cologne and warm skin. "No," he said simply. "I just pay attention." And that made my stomach twist in ways I didn't want to unpack. The street was quiet except for the hum of traffic in the distance. A breeze lifted my hair slightly, and he reached out, slow, deliberate, and tucked a loose strand behind my ear. My whole body went still. "Why do you do it?" he asked, voice low. "Do what?" "Pretend you can't stand me. When you look at me like that." My breath caught. I didn't even know what "like that" meant. But the way his eyes softened, like he'd been waiting for this moment for far too long, told me he knew exactly what he saw. "I don't," I started, but my voice faltered. "You do," he whispered, cutting me off. His fingers grazed my cheek, barely there, as if testing the waters. "I've spent years provoking you, waiting for you to break. But you never did. You're stubborn. I like that about you." The truth was I was breaking now. Every inch of me was hyper-aware of him, the warmth of his body so close to mine, the steady calm of his gaze while I felt like I was coming apart. I should have walked away. I should have told him he was wrong. But I didn't. Instead, I just stood there, frozen, trembling in the smallest ways he definitely noticed, while his hand slid slowly from my cheek down to my jaw, his thumb tracing lightly across my skin. "You're quiet," he murmured, leaning in so close that I could feel his breath ghost over my lips. "That's not like you." And all I could whisper back was, "Maybe you finally shut me up." His smile widened just enough to make my stomach flip. He didn't kiss me, not yet. He just stayed there, our faces inches apart, letting the moment stretch, tighten, burn. It was the most intoxicating silence I'd ever known. That silence felt heavier than any words we'd ever exchanged. For years, our battles had been loud sarcasm, teasing, cruel jokes that always felt just a little too personal. But this quiet pull between us was louder than any argument we'd ever had. His thumb lingered against my jaw, brushing the edge of my lip like he was memorizing the shape of me. "Say it," he whispered. "Say what?" "That you don't hate me." My throat tightened. I could feel my heart slamming against my ribs, my chest rising faster with every breath. I didn't answer, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I couldn't. Instead, I stepped back just half a pace. A thin line of cold air slid between us, and yet, his eyes never left mine. "You think I'm scared to admit it?" I asked, my voice softer than I wanted. "I know you are." His tone wasn't smug anymore. It was low, steady, almost tender. Something in me cracked. I stepped forward again, deliberately, closing the distance this time. My hand brushed against his chest, tentative, like I was testing reality. He didn't move. He just stood there, waiting, letting me decide. And God, I wanted him. Every inch of me had wanted him for longer than I cared to admit. My hand curled lightly into the fabric of his shirt as I looked up at him. "I don't hate you," I finally breathed. The relief in his eyes was fleeting, because in the next heartbeat, his mouth was on mine. It wasn't slow and it wasn't gentle. It was years of tension colliding at once, hungry, messy, and overwhelming. My hand slid up his chest to his neck, clutching him like I couldn't stand even an inch of space. He pressed me back against the brick wall, his body caging mine in, but not with force. It felt like surrender, like both of us had been holding back so long that neither of us knew how to stop anymore. Every brush of his lips, every shiver that ran through me, it felt inevitable. When he finally pulled back just slightly, both of us breathless, his forehead rested against mine. "See," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "You were never fooling me." I laughed softly, even as my chest still heaved for air. "You're insufferable. And you're mine." The way he said it, like it had always been true, left me too weak to argue. His words lingered in the air, "You're mine," like a promise I hadn't known I'd been craving. I should have pushed him away. I should have reminded both of us that this was reckless, that it would change everything. But instead, my fingers curled tighter at the back of his neck, pulling him closer again. This time the kiss was slower, deliberate, like he wanted me to feel every second of it. His lips moved with maddening patience, teasing me, as if he knew exactly how desperate I was becoming. When his hands finally slid to my waist, I felt the warmth of them through the thin fabric of my top, spreading heat through me like fire creeping across dry grass. My body reacted instinctively, leaning into him, closing the space until there wasn't a fraction of air left between us. "You're shaking," he murmured against my mouth. "Shut up," I whispered, but my voice cracked with a laugh I couldn't suppress. He smiled against my lips. "You've been dying for this." I hated how true it felt. He tilted my chin slightly, his lips brushing just under my jaw, light, grazing, enough to send shivers racing down my spine. My fingers tightened in his shirt, bunching the fabric like I was anchoring myself. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, the words warm against my skin. I didn't. Instead, I breathed out, barely audible, "Don't you dare." His laugh was soft, low, and satisfied. As his hand slid up my back, fingers splaying against me like he'd been memorizing my shape in his mind for years. We were still outside, but it didn't matter. The world felt distant, irrelevant. Every sound around us faded until there was only the sound of his breath, mine, the quiet hum of something we'd been denying for far too long. When he kissed me again, deeper this time, my knees felt weak, like the fight I'd held onto for years had finally drained out of me. And for the first time in forever, I didn't want to win anymore. He didn't let go of my hand the whole way to his apartment. It wasn't rushed. He didn't drag me along like he was desperate. Instead, every step felt intentional, like he already knew how this night would end, and he wanted me to want it just as much as he did. By the time we stepped inside, my chest was tight with anticipation. The door clicked shut behind us, the quiet sound impossibly loud in the stillness. For a moment, neither of us moved. He just looked at me. Really looked at me, like he was seeing every version of me I tried to hide behind my walls. The teasing, the fighting, the pretending. It all felt so absurd now. "You're sure?" he asked softly. I swallowed hard, my heart hammering. "You really think I'd be here if I wasn't?" That was all it took. He closed the space between us in 2 steps, his hands finding my face as he kissed me like he'd been holding back for years. This kiss was different, deep, consuming but still achingly tender. I felt the edge of the counter against my back as his lips trailed lower, brushing the side of my throat in a way that sent sparks racing through me. My fingers slid up his chest, gripping his shirt like I couldn't stand the thought of him pulling away. The air between us grew heavier, thicker. Every touch felt amplified. The warmth of his palms against my waist, the way his breath hitched when my fingers brushed the back of his neck. "God, you drive me insane," he murmured against my skin. "Good," I whispered back, my lips brushing his jaw. He laughed softly, a low sound that made my stomach flip. "You have no idea how long I've wanted this." "I think I do," I breathed, and for once there was no more pretending. When he finally scooped me up and carried me to his bedroom, my pulse was a roar in my ears. The world outside ceased to exist. The door shut, and with it, so did every boundary we'd ever kept between us. The bedroom was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the city outside his window. Everything felt quieter here, like the world had shrunk to just the 2 of us, breathing the same unsteady rhythm. He set me down gently, his hands still resting on my waist as if he wasn't ready to let go. I could see it in his eyes, that mix of restraint and hunger, the years of teasing and denial now hanging by the thinnest thread. For a long moment he didn't kiss me. He just traced his fingers slowly down my arm, leaving a trail of goosebumps in their wake. "You've always been mine," he said softly. My chest tightened at the way he said it. Not arrogant but certain, like it had always been true and we were only now admitting it. I reached for him, curling my fingers into the fabric of his shirt, and pulling him close until our foreheads touched. "Then prove it," I whispered. The control in him finally snapped. His mouth was on mine again, deep, desperate, like every second apart had been a mistake. My hand slid over his chest, his shoulders, feeling the tension coiled beneath his skin as he pressed me back against the edge of the bed. When we fell onto the mattress, it wasn't graceful. It was messy, hungry, real. His hands roamed like he couldn't decide where to touch me first, and everywhere his skin met mine burned like fire. "Tell me to slow down," he murmured, breathless. "I won't," I breathed back, my voice barely audible. The way he kissed me then, slower, deeper, like he wanted to memorize me, was somehow even more intoxicating. Every brush of his lips felt deliberate, every touch sending waves of heat through me. My body arched toward his instinctively, needing more without even knowing what more meant anymore. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his thumb brushing over my lower lip as if he couldn't believe I was really here. "You've been fighting me for so long," he said, voice low. "Maybe I just wanted you to fight for me," I whispered. The way his eyes darkened at that made my breath hitch, and then he kissed me again, slow, deep, claiming every part of the moment until I couldn't tell where I ended and he began. Everything we'd been holding back finally spilled over. Somewhere in the haze, everything slowed. It wasn't just heat anymore. It was the way he touched me, like every inch of me mattered. His hands weren't frantic now. They were steady, deliberate, as if he wanted to remember every detail. The teasing smirk he always wore was gone. What replaced it was something far more dangerous: vulnerability. When he looked at me, really looked, it wasn't like all those times across a bar or during one of our ridiculous arguments. It was deeper, softer, and terrifyingly real. "You're different like this," I whispered, my fingers tracing the line of his jaw. He caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. "No," he murmured. "This is just me when I'm not trying to drive you insane." I laughed softly, breathlessly. "You've been doing that for years. And you loved every second of it." God help me, I had. His lips found mine again, slower this time, like he wanted to savor it. There was no more hesitation. Only a closeness that felt both wild and strangely tender. Like the world outside these walls didn't exist anymore. Every move, every sigh, every shiver was unspoken confession. The man I had hated for so long was kissing me like I was something he'd been aching to find, and holding me like he never wanted to let go. I felt it then, clearer than ever. This wasn't about winning anymore. It wasn't even about years of pent-up desire finally spilling over. It was about the fact that somewhere along the way I'd stopped hating him, and started being terrified of how much I wanted him. And now? There was no turning back. When he finally pulled me against him, his forehead resting on mine, he whispered, "I knew you'd be mine. I just had to wait until you were ready to admit it." And for the first time in years, I didn't have a single comeback. When the storm of it all finally settled, we just lay there, quiet, tangled together in a way that felt shockingly natural, like we'd always fit. For a while, neither of us spoke. His hand traced slow, absent-minded patterns along my arm, and every touch still sent little waves through me. Felt so strange. Not the closeness, not even the intensity, but how easy it suddenly was. "This changes everything," I finally whispered. He turned his head to look at me, that familiar half-smile tugging at his lips. "Good. I've been waiting for that." I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. "You've been provoking me all these years just to get this?" "No," he said, his voice low but steady. "I've been provoking you because I knew you felt the same way I did. You just weren't ready to admit it yet." I studied him for a long moment. There was no arrogance in his tone, just certainty, the kind that made my chest ache because deep down I knew he was right. "God, I hated you," I said softly. "No," he murmured, brushing his lips against my temple. "You wanted me. You just didn't know what to do about it." And maybe that was the truth. Because lying there, his arm around me like he'd been doing it forever, I realized that all the fighting, all the sharp words and eye rolls, had just been our twisted way of circling what we really wanted. He kissed my hair so gentle it made my throat tighten. "You were always mine," he whispered. And for the first time I didn't want to fight back. "I still don't know what this means for us. If we'll burn out or if this was the start of something real. But one thing is certain. I never hated him. I was just terrified of how much I wanted to be his." Fire the end.